Welcome back to the Shrink Down. As we're recording this, there's so much that has gone on in this country recently and still going on. By the time you hear this in about a week or two, some of the headlines might be shifting, things might be changing, but the underlying feeling that a lot of people are experiencing, stress, fatigue, will still be there in a couple weeks. And so for some of you, it also might feel like too much, maybe even kind of overwhelming, or you're just tired of talking about it. And that's completely valid. So today we want to be able to talk about kind of both of those things. So holding those hard conversations and also taking care of yourself during this time. But first, let's start on a lighter note with our 4-minute phase. Who wants to go first?
I'll start.
Okay.
So I actually am going to do something a little older, but rewatched it. So I'm going to talk about Normal People. It's a book written by Sally Rooney, and I love the book. The book is one of my probably like top 25. It's very good. And then several years ago, a Hulu TV show came out based on the book, also called Normal People. And it's 12 episodes, I believe, and they're short. They're like 30-minute episodes. And then that's the whole thing. So it's just like a limited series. It is with Paul Mescal and Daisy Edgar Jones. So a lot of people know who Paul Mescal is now because he's done Gladiator and several other big movies. But this was really his first thing. When you look at his like IMDb list, this was the first thing. So when I watched this, I remember being like, who is this man? Like, he is amazingly talented. He just blew me away. And then I actually sought him out. So he's been in a couple other like independent films, smaller films, and I watched those. And then of course I was like, he blew up with Gladiator and all the rest. The story is about basically they start as two teens in Ireland. She's kind of the nerdy girl. He's an athlete, sort of popular, and they connect. And then it's sort of their friendship and love story through high school, college, and beyond, with a little bit like One Day, where it kind of keeps dropping you in at different points where they're, together or not together. And it covers like childhood, growing up from adolescence to adulthood. It covers kind of like socioeconomic stuff because she's really wealthy. He's not, and sort of the discrepancies of their own experiences. And their chemistry together, though, is really what you watch the show for. They have this insane chemistry together. It is a beautiful story of friendship and love. And I highly recommend it. As I said, I watched it right away, loved it. And then just in the last few months, I've actually had some friends read the book and watch it. And so it inspired me to go back and rewatch it, which I did this time with Owen, and he also loved it. So, it's on Hulu. And
Yes.
as I said, it's a pretty quick watch because it is just like 30-minute episodes. They are, I would say, heavier. It's not like a light show. It's not super heavy, but it's not like a rom-com. It's definitely like a more realistic story of which is why it's awesome, because they actually like look like real people.
Is it one book and the show is based off one book? Okay.
Yep.
Would you recommend reading the book first?
That's always a good question.
So if that's of interest to you, if you are the person who does that, then 100%, because the book is that good.
And I did the one at your recommendation. I did that with the one day. Is that what it's called?
Yes.
Yes. And I very much liked that.
Yes. Yeah.
Reading the book first 100%, and then the show.
Yeah. Read it. And it is very true to the novel. And it is similar to like One Day, where it is one that does the book justice. The ending is similar, but they have like a little bit of it's the same ending, but they kind of take a little different twist. So it's even interesting from that perspective. So it's not like you're just watching the same exact iteration. So Yeah.
Cool.
It's very good. Terry, what about you?
Mine is our honey straws. Do you guys ever buy these?
Oh,
No,
yeah.
Honey
I love
straws?
like
I
those
see them at like
Okay.
fests, farm
Yeah.
fest. That's where I've seen them.
yeah.
So many years ago, I was testing a kid. I forgot how old they were. And sometimes they'll bring snacks, while you're testing,
Mhm.
you'll take a break.
Yep.
And he busted out like 3 of these and was sucking them down. And I was like, that's super interesting. Like, what is that? He's like, they're honey straws. Like, this is what my mom sends for my snacks at school and et cetera.
Zing.
Yes, exactly. So then fast forward to about a year ago, and I forgot somewhere I saw something where they're like, yes, for kids when you're playing sports or even for yourself, honey straws are like ideal to just, you can suck them down, you pop them with your teeth, and then you suck them down. I get them at Whole Foods in a pack. So I have started doing 1 or 2 before like a run or a workout. And
I was
then
gonna say it's like what the runners will.
yes.
Oh, so it's like it gives
you see them at like the
energy.
running
Yes.
store, like the little liquid peanut butter or whatever.
Yes.
Oh,
So it's
interesting.
very similar to that.
Mm.
My kids
Yeah.
love them. So I've been including them along with other
funny.
things for school snacks.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I was an assistant coach for the little school track team in the spring. And I brought a pack of these. And so the kids in between races, which is like a lot of sprinting and relays, they loved them. I mean, I was just whipping through and they would suck them down. Danny, my son, even had 2 back-to-back basketball games on Saturday. And in between, I was like, do you want one? He's like, sure. Who knows what it really does, but I think it gives like a little boost. One of the
Yeah.
moms was a gymnast. I think she was a gymnast in college as well. When she saw me doing this at the track meet, said, oh, my coach, like in the 90s for gymnastics, used to give us spoonfuls of honey at meets, like in between,
Funny.
before
Yeah.
you would perform an event.
Yeah.
So I think, adults, kids, whatever, honey straws.
I'm gonna have to
It
try
may
that.
seem, it's funny because I didn't
was
know
tired
that
in the
that was
afternoon.
the route you were taking with them. I just thought like I constantly buy honey and then it gets all congealed.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And I was
Oh.
thinking those would be perfect to like if you wanted to sweeten up your
Then
tea
you
or
can
something
squeeze 'em
because
in.
they're
Yeah.
individual and they wouldn't ever congeal.
Yeah.
Then you have to heat it up in the microwave and then that's
Well, they're
a whole
nice and
issue.
portable. And then I was
Yeah.
a little under the weather a week or 2 ago. And so I like threw a couple in my work bag, knowing that like
Yeah.
when I would have tea and stuff at work,
Coat
then I
your
can
throat.
I can coat my throat and suck some of these down.
Oh my
It's a
gosh,
good
my
idea.
grandma used to do that spoonful of honey, and then you squeeze some like lemon on top, and you
Uh-huh.
throw up.
Yeah. So, and they're
Also-
kind of fun. You like pop them with your teeth and
Yeah.
suck them down.
I've seen them
So-
at like fairs and festivals. I've
Yeah,
always
like
like,
a
oh, can I
farmer's
have
market.
yes,
Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Her school has bees, and like they have like a honey fest, or
Yeah.
I forget what they call it, but they have those there too. So, but I never knew that they were for
Fun.
like a burst of energy. It's good to know.
Yeah. How about you, Vanessa?
So I'm gonna share today something that I incorporate into like my workout. So everybody here has either has one or has seen someone using a weighted vest. Like that's the hot
Yeah.
thing. Everyone's talking about weighted vest, weighted vest. I purchased one, and to be honest, like I never really got into it. Now Mark, my husband, uses it multiple times a day. He walks our dog 500 times a day,
Mhm.
literally, and he wears it every single time he goes out. And so it's getting used. But I don't know, I just couldn't get into it. But I've always been an ankle weight person. I've had them forever, even before the weighted vest. It's just like a nice way to add, especially to like ab exercises, like lower ab exercises. Like if you've kind of gotten to the point where you're like, okay, I can do like 100 of these, and I don't feel like I want to up my game because this is too easy. It's just adding the ankle weights to your ab exercises. And also just, I'll walk around with them. I just
Yeah. it's a
put
good
them on my
idea.
ankle and I just walk around with them. And it's just like a nice kind of like added leg workout. And so the pair I have, I've actually purchased them twice. So I left them at our other house that we have at the beach, so I didn't have to lug them back and forth. I have 5-pound weights right now. I think I'm going to go move up to the next level. And I got them on Amazon for like $20. But yeah, you could go on a
Nice.
walk with them in theory, and you can just walk around the house in them. But I love them just to add a little boost to the exercise with little ankle weights. So I'll share those. And I think, Terry, you were
Fun.
just saying before we
I was
logged
just
on that you were wondering if you had a pair.
I was wondering if I've ever purchased a pair of ankle weights, and I was wandering around our basement in the house looking
So
around to see
random.
maybe I do buy things and completely forget that they exist, and then I discover them
Oh,
again, which
fine.
is like very fun.
Yeah.
Actually,
What
I'm
were you
like,
planning
"Oh,
on doing with them?
I was going to do a workout. I was
There you
going to
go.
put them on my ankles and do a workout.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
as
that's
a
good.
side
Yeah.
note, my mom back in the 80s had these monster do you know what I'm talking about? They were black
Oh,
and they were like
yeah.
they had the
100%.
Velcro.
Yes.
These don't look like
Yes.
that. Yeah.
Yes, they were Velcro and you'd like wrap them around. And I remember my mom
100%,
doing
yeah.
workouts with them. And then I would use them sometimes, like once I got
Mhm.
older, and they were like these
Oh my goodness.
beasts of,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like that must have been the only option that existed for ankle
Filled
weights
with
back in the
sand.
day.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
I'm guessing, Vanessa, you're going to share ones that are a little sleeker than that.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I
Yes.
think there's lots. Yes, they're definitely not the big, like old school ones. They are Velcro
Yes.
though, but they're
They're like-
smaller. They're
Yeah.
smaller. Yeah. And I
You would
also
have to,
wanted to,
wrap
Yes.
them around.
like, I wanted to make sure that I was going to use them. So I bought, like, I looked for a pair that had good reviews that were not
Yeah.
super expensive. Like, you could go,
Yeah.
it's like they have some where you can like change the weights on them. I just bought like a basic pair. So I'll share my
Yeah.
basic pair on our
Yeah.
Instagram. But yes, you could get much fancier than that. But if you're just trying to
Fun.
figure out if you think you're going to use them, I think this is a good pair
Yeah.
to have to just figure out, like, am I going to actually use these? Because I am also notorious for buying things that I think I'm going to use and then I don't use them.
Yes.
And then I can't return them.
And
Yes.
sometimes I buy things twice and then I have two things. And then I
That's
go,
fun.
oh,
You mean,
yeah.
do you know how often I do that? Like so regularly, because I'll be looking and then I'll add it to the cart and then I won't buy it. And then I'll be like, oh, I forgot to buy this. And I'll go and add it again. Like my daughter's 13th birthday banner that I bought
You got
twice.
2 of those? Oh, nice.
Twice. Yeah. So I was like, maybe can I hang it twice? I was like, just return it. I was like, okay, fine.
How about you, Lauren?
Lauren.
So I'm going to discuss like a service, a concept. So have you guys heard of Donate Stuff?
No.
It's a company, online company, with actual like physical locations. It is in Illinois. I looked it up before we came on
Oh.
here. It is not in Maryland. But so for listeners, it's in Michigan, Illinois. It's in like, let's say 8 states or something like that. So it's donatestuff.com. And it's a service in which you go on and you can pick your date and then your charity that you want to donate to, and they come and pick it up off your porch, which is like
You are
amazing.
speaking my
So-
language.
I know. So here's the thing, like in foreshadowing what we're going to talk about, like one of the things I clearly always end up feeling when things in the world feel out of control is like, how do I make my world smaller and control what I can control? And how can I help?
Mhm.
So I think that's what ended up happening with me last week, because I just was like, okay, I need to clean out closets and donate things. But so this is probably the 3rd time I've used it. And so this time I picked a local foster home.
Mhm.
And so they
Mm.
will tell you, like, we need women's, men's, and children's clothing. We need like housewares that are, they take blankets, they take towels, like all this, like they tell you exactly what, and then books, little toys, things like
Mm.
that. And you just have to bag it up or box it up. And then they give you these signs in your email, and you leave it on your porch the day you pick. And at some point during the day, they come and pick it up. And for somebody that has done Salvation Army 100 times in my life, right? And it sits in the back of my car for like weeks before I end up going to Salvation Army. So if you're like me, this feels so much better. It's super efficient. So for me, there were like 4 or 5 different places I could choose from. So Purple Heart's on there. Like 2 local charities or organizations. There's an animal rescue one on there as well. So, and you don't have to donate things specifically for those organizations. You could donate all the clothes, and then they're going to go and put them somewhere else, and then get funds for animal rescue or whatever it is. It's a great concept. It works so well. And so like they're coming to my house to pick things up in 2 days. And then just by the time we get home, it'll be gone. And I know it's gone to a good place. And it's not in the back of my trunk for like 3 months. So.
Or in our office. Our office
Yeah.
just becomes like a second Goodwill. And then it's
Yes.
like too
ground.
much stuff to even load
Yeah.
up to our car. So then
Yes.
it's, yeah. Now, do they take
Yes.
furniture? Can you find a
just gonna
place
ask
that
that.
takes furniture?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So
Oh.
the only rules, like at least for my local one, so you do have to click first. So it'd be interesting if you clicked and then they tell you exactly. for ours, they take anything that you can bag or box. So
Okay.
I have done like lamps or small tables as long as I've been able to put them in a garbage bag, because they want to make it easy for their workers coming to your home in terms of the way that they take things. So they'll take like bikes and things like that, but you have to figure out a way to bag or box them to make it easier for them to load them into their trucks.
Okay.
At least that's for our local pickup crew. But it would be interesting if it was any different. But yeah, it's amazing. I love it.
That's
so much
awesome.
more efficient
That's
than
great.
I've ever done things. So when you feel like you have to do something, that's a good one. Wilhelmina,
that.
what about you?
Oh, I already
Did
went.
you shared? Oh, I'm
I already
in. That was
started.
it. Okay, that's right. You started.
Oh,
Okay.
actually, one thing I wanted to
Yeah.
add about normal people, not that this really matters, I think, for anyone here, but it is one to watch without kids. I think it probably goes without saying, but it is very sexual at times. And
Interesting.
like the joke is you will see Paul Mescal's penis like a couple different times. Like,
Oh.
so don't, yeah.
Oh.
yeah. But it's like,
Well,
but
I wasn't gonna
but
watch
here's the thing.
before, but-
It's like, it's like,
I don't even
it's
know
like
who he
real.
is.
It's so funny because it's just like, it's so real though. It's not like, it's like they're just like hanging out and just naked. Like it's like, and you're just like, there's Paul Mescal's penis right there.
They're
Hello.
just hanging out naked. That seems very
Hanging out
real.
naked.
Note
Check it
to
out, like
all the
self:
rest of us.
Google
So
Paul
real.
Mescal. Okay.
You don't need to Google it, Terry. Just watch the show.
I will.
can-
I will.
Oh, goodness.
I will. I always say that. I will. About half the time. Okay.
All right, so let's go ahead and transition to our
Shifting
topic
gears
today.
hard.
Away from
I
Paul
know.
Mescal's penis.
Shift
Okay.
away
Yes.
from
Shift.
that.
Yes.
Although, I think again, you were talking about things that you can do to make,
Yes.
yourself feel better.
Let's use that
these,
transition.
in these situations. I think laughing and finding things that can kind of take your mind
It's
off
true.
are obviously
It's true.
things that can be really helpful. So ladies, I think, we can start off this by maybe just saying, how are we all feeling right now? Just kind of in general. And then we can kind of just go from there as far as, what we're doing, the conversations that we're having, or other things that we're doing to kind of, cope with everything that's going on, how we're feeling. I can kind of start off and just say that, Lauren was saying, like, it's been a lot going on. I feel like I've run the gamut of emotions personally, of just feeling like completely just devastated, to feeling angry, to feeling like, oh, I just need to take a step away from everything. And so yeah, and I think that's the way a lot of people are feeling.
I would agree with that. I feel like it's all over the place. It goes
Mhm.
up and down and sideways, and you go from being horrified and devastated to sometimes numb, and feeling like, okay, I just gotta have my kids do their homework. Okay, now we're going back to
Yep.
that. I wonder how much I should talk with them about. I wonder what was discussed at school today, what will be discussed at sports practice tonight or school tomorrow. Just overwhelming empathy and sadness and then anger, and then all of that in one big mess within sometimes the same 5 to 10 minutes. And I think part of the difficulty is that social media and our current just news media cycle, even just the TV, has that same whiplash where it's just, here's a funny meme, here's a devastating horror story, here's a clip of something, it's just like ding, ding, ding. It's pinball. And so, I feel like not only do I feel like that personally, emotionally, I also feel like that's I'm being presented with sometimes also, if that makes sense.
And
Yeah, it absolutely does.
and we were never meant to consume information in this way.
No,
And
not
so
the
I
speed,
think like,
and
we are not
the speed
from an
and-
evolutionary standpoint, like we're not equipped. Our brains have not adapted to the way in which we are consuming and being fed information. So I think that makes it even more overwhelming if we don't
Right.
realize that that's what's happening. Like you
Right.
said, that bing, 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 bing. If we're not super aware of like what our limits are, I mean, because even if we feel like we know our personal limits, like just like mankind is not meant to have this kind of information coming at us, and the way it's coming at us in without warning often. So
Mhm.
to your point, Terry, if
Mhm.
you're somebody that like scrolls through stories or something like that,
Yeah.
and you could be like consuming some like fun stuff, lighthearted stuff, somebody's first day of school or their birthday or whatever, and then you're hit with something from somebody's
Yeah.
social media page that you weren't expecting,
Oh,
our
yeah.
brains can't compute that. So it's overwhelming.
Definitely.
And I think I will get sort of consumed by it, and then my mind will be there. I'm thinking about it. Oftentimes I have a handful of patients that will talk about it in
Mm.
therapy because of how they're feeling overwhelmed
Mhm.
about it.
Yeah.
And then I'll do something like go out and meet someone for dinner, meet friends for dinner, and no one will talk about any of it because we are in such sort of a divisive um, country right now, where I feel like everyone, unless you sort of know a person well, no one wants to sort of bring it up. And then I'm sitting here being like, I don't even know how to like talk about something normal, like
Yeah.
Right.
something light when my mind is like filled with this, but then no one else is talking about it. And so then it's sort of this weird isolating thing, where you're left sort of not just the elephant in the room of no one's talking about it, which I think can be, as I said, like very isolating. And then
Yeah.
it's also at times refreshing because it's like, okay, good, we're taking a break from
I
talking
was
about
just going to say, because that could be that could be the person across from you thinking like, I had 3 patients today that I talked about this with. I am so good with
Yeah.
talking with Wilhelmina about what our kids are doing in school right now. Like, so it could be
Right.
not that they're feeling isolated, but actually that they're gaining connection from you while you're feeling isolated, but they're feeling like, oh, good, I need a break.
Yeah.
I was just thinking too that sometimes, it's hard because you don't know if that's where they're at, and you don't want to be like the Debbie Downer who's like all of a sudden, you're out and this is supposed to be a fun, friends night out or, whatever.
Right.
And you're saying like, hey everyone, let's talk about this like topic that's really heavy right now. So
Right.
I think it's hard
Which
sometimes
I have a
to
hard time not doing. I
I
have a hard
actually
time.
do. I actually do too. I often am that person. I'm like, does
I'm
Right,
always
everyone
like,
want to talk about the
well,
horrible state of the world right
yeah.
now? No?
I know.
Okay. What is
I
everyone
know.
watching on Netflix?
I know. I
Right.
think we went out to dinner, like just back to back dinners. And like, I think at some point I was like, I kind of want to know like what, and I brought it up and I tried to like bring it up in a, like a casual way, but I think you also have to know your group, right? I
Your
definitely
audience.
have the
You do.
friends that
Mhm.
I know that I can just be like, what in the fuck? Like, and send a
Mhm.
text, right? And then I have other people where, like you were saying, Wilhelmina, that you don't really know where they stand because maybe you've just never had those conversations with them, or they're not as close friends, and you don't want to like start, a conversation
Mhm.
that's going to lead to, I don't know, anything that's, like a negative situation, right? When you're out having dinner, right?
But it
Well, and
didn't
it's
used to
and
be
it's
that way.
it didn't, and that's
It
what I
did
was
Yeah.
not.
saying.
It
I
did
was
not used to be that
Yes.
way.
Yes.
what like the things that I want to talk about are not actually anything political in the sense of like I actually think most people feel universally like the things that are going on in our country are like scary
Yeah.
and horrible. I think that's like, and so
Whatever
it's strange that it feels strange to me that we can't talk about it because then it somehow does become political, which I'm like, but they're not political. Many of them are not necessarily political things.
No,
So
they're
it's
like
just a
humanistic
Yeah.
topics.
yes, I was
Yeah,
like
Right.
these
I
horrible
know.
tragedies all over, happening all the time, and yet we can't talk about them because of politics. It seems strange. It seems very like strange to my brain, where I know I'm not the only one weighed down by the heaviness of the world. I mean, obviously we all are, right?
Yeah.
And the other thing is, all of us were in college when 9/11 happened, right?
Mhm.
So we all
Yeah.
have, as young adults, a collective experience of what it was like to have something real sudden and really heavy and
Smash
really
into your
scary
life.
just show up on a beautiful Tuesday
Yep.
morning in the fall, right? And just took our
Mhm.
country and like thrust us, things just felt turned upside down. And we all probably remember how cohesive everybody was
Yeah.
and
Yes.
felt,
Together.
and
And
that
Yes.
in that
absolutely.
unity and united, and how
Yeah.
what that experience was like for the world to feel like a really scary place and for scary stuff to be
Yeah.
happening, but to feel like at least people were in it together. And I
Yes.
think what's missing is that piece.
I
when
agree.
we have
I
these
agree.
horrific things happen. Um, and I also feel like for myself personally, I sort of anticipated this before I had kids. Like I remember
Mhm.
working in a school when Sandy Hook happened when those
Mhm.
Mhm.
classroom of first graders were killed. And I remember thinking, oh, at least I don't have to have any kids I have to explain this to, because I had parents at the time in my therapy work
Yeah.
were asking me, how do I talk to my kids about this when they hear about it, like they're teenagers? And I remember thinking, maybe there won't be as many school shootings by the time I have kids. And like, we won't have to
Ugh.
explain much of it. I remember thinking that. And
Or
how
even thinking like
naive.
this won't happen again, right? Because why would
Well,
this
not like
happen
this.
again?
This would never happen
Right.
again.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, 2 weeks ago, my kids are sitting in mass at the exact same time those poor kids were sitting in mass in Minneapolis.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
nothing has changed. And
But
so it's
not
like
only that, things have actually escalated and gotten worse from like that
statistically,
standpoint.
absolutely. Yeah.
Statistically,
Statistically,
yeah.
they've gotten
Yeah.
significantly worse. And that's like, those are just facts when you look at how many shootings have actually occurred. And so,
Mhm.
I think viewing it from the lens as a parent versus
It's very
just
different.
is also very different,
Yeah.
I think, than it was
I
before I
also
had
think when things
kids.
first started, like you said, the first time one of these situations happened, we didn't have kids. So obviously you think about it in a very different way than if you have a child in the moment. And I think there was a period of
Yeah.
time where your brain is constantly trying to find reason for, right? Like you're
Yes.
answers and reasoning and reassurance for yourself so that you're not, anxious or feeling, so you're like a way to control how you're feeling. And so I think for a long time I was like, oh, this is a high school thing. And then when it wasn't a high school
Yeah.
thing, oh, this is a public school thing. And then it wasn't a public school. And so we're constantly like, and I think we've gotten to the point where there is no it's not,
Yeah.
there is no like this is a this thing, that thing. It's happening.
Right. No one's
We've
immune.
comforted ourselves into a
Yes.
corner. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. That's a great way to put it. That it's just
Well,
happening. And now we're parents, right? Now we are also parents. And so this is definitely something that, I think we all think of regardless of where your political views are, right? You think
Mhm.
about the safety of your children. And, we had talked about getting Everly a Gizmo watch. I think we even brought it up on
Mhm.
here, for like,
Yeah.
because drop-offs and, she's going to be doing more stuff kind of like independently. This way she can like reach out to me. Like we've had a couple of like, incidents on the bus where she didn't know where she was getting off because sometimes she gets off at one stop, something the other, just a way. And, after what has happened just more recently, I said to Mark, I was like, I think we need to do this. And not just for the reasons that we were initially thinking, but I'm like, man, if something happened, we could find her or she could reach
More
out
easily.
to us. And I'm
Yeah.
thinking, and then my next thought is like, what in the fuck? Like, do I really have to, like, is this really a thing that I have to think of as a parent? Is like, if this happens to my child, because now it's just happened so much that you can't you think that, well, it's never going to happen to my
Mhm.
kid in my child's school, because we've kind of, like we were just saying a minute ago, that it's happening in lots of different situations. So you can't say now like, well, it's never going to happen to my child's school or to my child. This just isn't a realistic thought to have anymore.
Well, and you talked about like, how do you talk to your kids? And I know this is something we've talked about, right? We, in our text thread,
Mhm.
we have talked about like,
Mhm.
are you guys mentioning this with your kids? Are you talking about
Yeah.
it? How are you talking about it? And we don't watch really much news in our house for a variety of reasons.
Mhm.
So
Same.
they don't hear about much in our house. And they
Right.
don't have access to social media or things like that. So like, I know that Maddie and Griffin are not seeing those things, at least at home. Or so I was sort of like, I'm going to wait till they come to me, and then they can ask the questions so that they're coming to me with the information they have. And then I can kind of give them an answer based on what they ask. And so then after Minnesota, especially because it was Minnesota and we had just been there, I sort of waited, didn't hear anything. And then after last week and all that went down, I was sort of like, I still am not hearing anything. So at dinner the other night, I said, hey guys, have you heard about anything going on in the
Mhm.
news?
Just sort
And
of
I was shocked.
open-ended.
Open-ended.
Yeah, just anything.
And
They both knew.
and Maddie quickly was like, you mean this guy that got shot? And I was like, yeah. Yes, that would be one of them. And then she was like, and the school shooting in Minnesota. And I was like, oh my God. And I said, yes. And I was taken aback and I felt horrible because I was like, they knew about these things and they didn't even come to me to talk to them. So then we had this conversation about what happened, and I answered the questions they had, trying to do it. I know,
Mhm.
Terry, you have always said, like, answer the question they ask, and like, don't
Don't
give more
give them.
details.
Details.
Yep.
Don't give more
Mhm.
details than they,
Find
than
out
they need.
find out what
Yeah.
they know and answer
Yes.
the questions they
Yes.
Be
ask.
curious first.
Yes.
Why are you
Yes.
asking? What do you know? Yeah.
Yes.
And it was fairly straightforward from that point, except then the added thing that I felt like I had to add, and it made me just kind of very sad, was, hey guys, there's videos going around now, and if anyone ever wants to show you a video and you don't know what they're going to show you, please don't watch it.
Yeah.
And
And what to
that they
say,
sort of
like
were
give
like,
them
and they were like,
script.
why? They were like, why? And I was like, well, because there's footage out there of this happening. And I actually was very honest with them. I was like, I have seen this footage. I said, you do not want to see this footage. I promise you, you don't want to see this footage. I believe it will scare you. It's not good footage. I didn't want to, like, it was not, I didn't want to see this footage. And so, but I'm like, why am I giving this advice to my children?
Because
Like,
of the
this
day
is
and
like,
age
what
we
kind
live
of,
in, the odds
Yeah.
of something being recorded. I mean,
Yeah.
think about
Right.
Well,
like
we were
what
talking last week about the silly stuff that gets recorded.
Right.
I mean,
Yes.
compared to this,
Yes.
the
Yeah.
silly
Right.
stuff.
I mean, I will say,
Everything is being recorded.
and I will
Everything
say,
is being
same thing.
recorded.
Well, I mean, I was not looking to find that. Like, I heard it was out there, and I was not looking for it. Somebody I know put it on one of their, like, on their Instagram, on their personal Instagram, and I was like,
oh,
why are you?
whoa.
Yeah, and I was like, when you go through the, like,
Whoa.
I was like, whoa, and I quickly went past it, and I was like, I was not looking for that, and
I know.
was not
No.
expecting that to be on someone's Instagram. They were like reposting the like somebody's reel of it, and I was shocked that someone felt like that was
Something they should post on their page.
yes, yeah,
Right.
and I'm not.
Right.
I was not looking for
But that
that.
goes exactly back to what we were saying earlier. Is like our brains are not.
Yeah.
Not only are you not actually seeking it out,
Yeah,
our brains cannot compute what it is we're seeing. So can you imagine kids' brains that we all know are not fully formed to understand a lot of things that are more abstract?
oh yeah,
Right.
They can't. And so to your point, Wilhelmina, unfortunately, talking to them where they're at, but
Mhm.
I personally would rather have the conversation at home than have them hear it or see it
100%.
elsewhere.
Yeah.
And then I think Terry or you referenced what Terry has said in the past, which I of course agree with and frequently say is like, be curious about what they want to know
Mhm.
Mhm.
and what questions they
Yeah.
have, as opposed to giving them unfiltered information that they might not be ready
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
take in or need, especially
Right.
given wherever they're at developmentally. Because then they can't compute.
right.
Yes.
Like
Well, I think
brain
it's-
cannot
And
understand.
I think it's hard too, because, well, I mean, I completely, you were waiting to see if they would come to you because you didn't want
Yeah.
to be the one who was like, hey, you were
And
trying
what
to
if they
not,
didn't
Yeah.
know?
not to,
What if they
right,
didn't
'cause
know?
they didn't
Right,
know, right? And you
right.
don't want to be the one they're like,
Right.
what's going on? And so I get that. So I really think it depends on like your children's age. Like, yes, like I'm not surprised Maddie knew because of her age, right? And her friends probably have social media and phones
Yep,
or
they
people in
do.
her grade,
Mhm.
right? So versus like my daughter's 8, and
Yeah.
I was like 99.9% sure like that wasn't going to land in her world at this time. Especially because most of the kids she's friends with don't have older siblings. They're either like an only like her or they are the oldest. And so I felt comfortable not having the conversation with her, but it's definitely tricky depending on your child's
Yeah.
age or, the grade they're in or who they're around, right? Like maybe your kids are, playing sports with older kids who are around and they might be talking about, I know Terry, you've mentioned that in different scenarios
Yep.
for your
Yep.
boys. And so I think it is hard. Like, how do you find the right balance of saying, hey, do you know what's going on with if they don't know? But I like the way that you did that. Wilhelmina was just kind of like, so, because they could have been like, I don't know, like,
Yep.
like this very kind
Right.
of general question about that. I think it was a good way to approach it so that you're not sharing something that maybe they don't know and they have no clue about, but then being able to address it. And I guess, Wilhelmina, my question for you is when they were like, yeah, did you get the sense that they were like worried about it or not? Like, what was your sense of where they were at with that information? I'm just so curious.
So they didn't. They didn't seem. I think a little bit when I said, "Hey, do you know that that school was like a mile away from where we stayed?" I know Maddie had like a look of like, "Oh wow," and I said, and I kind of was like, I sort of am at taking this point because of her age of also I want to sort of ground her in the sense of like you don't need to be scared, but then these things can happen. And I think sometimes it's like, oh, that stuff happens in scary places or dangerous places, and it's sort of like it doesn't. So it's this nuanced like I wanted her to kind of know this, but we have already had the conversation when they've done like the drills and such at their school.
Yeah.
We've talked about like the safety of their school and all of that. So they did not seem worried about it. I think Maddie was surprised that we had just been so close to that school. And I think that was a bit of a shock to her. And again, saying these things and even giving her that knowledge makes me feel sad.
So something similar happened with my boys that I asked them, Wilhelmina, hey, anything, that you heard at school, and they both had heard. So we had a conversation and I let them lead with questions, and they didn't have very many. We talked about like the sadness of like, there are sad things happening in the world.
Yeah.
Then I added, would you like me to tell you when there are sad things that happen in the future? Or would you like to hear it?
I like that.
How would you? And they both said, we'd like you to tell me. And I said, okay. So now I feel like as horrific as the events were, we kept it super at their level. I only answered the questions that they had. And then I did follow up with, in the future, unfortunately, bad things happen in the world. And I'm wondering if you'd rather hear them from me than, and it's fun, interesting. Jack, my 10-year-old, said he had heard kids were talking about it at school and he wasn't sure what was true and what wasn't.
Yeah.
Because they're 10.
Yeah. Right.
And so I said, okay, so then if and when something bad in the world happens again, I'm going to tell you, just so you know about it. But then I also gave them the caveat, but not all parents are doing that.
I told
But
my kids
obviously
the same
there's
thing.
parents on the other end of the thing that
Or
are telling
too
the
much.
kids before we've even
Too
processed
much.
it, right?
Too much.
Like the moment it happens, or they've got the news on 24/7 in their home, and we're very conscious of that as well. That is not on our televisions.
Lauren, your boys are 10 and 12, just so that people
10 and
listening
12,
under like the frame of reference for age range. So 10 and 12.
Fifth and sixth grade, fifth and sixth, and they had heard about it within the day.
And I will say, I like how you worded that better, Lauren, because I asked my 10-year-old fifth grader sort of a similar question, but I worded it differently because when I shared the information with him, he had not heard about it. And I sort of assumed he probably would have. He was at a sports practice that night with kids of varying ages. And we got in the car and he hadn't. And so I gave him, sort of the rundown of what happened. And his takeaway was like, why did you tell me that? I didn't want to know that. And I said, would you? And so I came back at him and said, would you rather me not? Like, would you rather hear about it from kids at school? I go, and he's like, no. And so the way it came out was similar conversation.
He's like, no, but also.
Yeah. He's like, but no. He's like, I do want you to hear it from you. And what's really interesting is his little brother is in third grade, is 8. And it was just him and I in the car. And I believe to this day, my 8-year-old still doesn't know what happened. And
Mine has no clue.
His brother didn't tell him. Like Danny has not told Tommy what happened. I think he tries to, sort of protect him in some ways, even though they're only 2 years apart. But that's on my rule of thumb. I don't know. I would be curious if you guys would agree or disagree. I think if your child is in third grade or up, you should probably have the open-ended, hey, heard of anything lately type of conversation. Because if you have a third grader and they have any older siblings, cousins, neighbors, friends who are
Mhm.
even 6 months to a year older than them, there's a very good possibility it could be in the conversation.
Mhm.
So I think, I don't know if you guys would agree or disagree with that, but I think,
I completely agree. You know, it's
I agree.
interesting. So obviously, my boys are at a private school, as are yours, Terry and
Mine.
Vanessa,
Yeah.
right?
hmm
But so ours are private and faith based. And
Mhm.
another, you just kind of struck something in my head when you said like third grade and up. At our school, and this would be true actually at a public school too, but just in a slightly different way, they'll pray for people,
yes.
like just good intentions for people, okay?
Yeah.
And sometimes they've heard about like a grandparent's death or a parent that's sick with something or
They
whatever,
pray for a lot of
and they've
things.
had questions about that.
Mhm.
And
Yes.
that's got to be confusing also.
Right.
And a much smaller scale, of course, but so it's worth it at that, I would say third grade is a really good kind of age and stage to just say, anything anybody talking about anything or anything you were wondering about, or
Mhm.
Yeah.
questions you had at school that you didn't get answered that had nothing to do with your schoolwork, like that kind of, because sometimes I've had the kids go, oh, I didn't know so and so's mom was, and I was like, oh, I didn't know you knew that. Like, and it's like with the best of intentions, but then you got to kind of follow up as a parent and be like, yep. And, that's very nice that you guys, were thinking about her today or wrote her get well cards or whatever it is that they had done.
Mhm.
So it's out there. And
Yeah.
if you don't talk to them about it, somebody else
Someone
probably will in
Yes.
some way, shape, or form.
Yes.
Well, and my daughter is she just turned 13 today, and she is in 7th grade. And I think it was last year. It could have been 5th grade, but I know one of her classes, they watch CNN 10. It's like a little like,
I've heard about schools doing this.
yes,
Yes.
yes,
Like a
Like a
kid,
little-
kid level.
yes.
Oh.
Mhm.
So I think the Minnesota shooting that's where she found out about it. Yeah.
Oh,
Mhm.
I don't know that I love
Oh.
that.
I will have to clarify that with her, but I think that's what she said.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I was sort of like, okay.
I believe that
Um,
is where some other kids I have heard about news that I've worked with clinically have heard about news stories. It was from watching the CNN 10 in school.
Do you guys as parents get a heads up as to whether or not the school decided to speak about something or not? Because I know our school will send an email and say, just so you know, we
Our
did
principal
not
usually
speak
sends
about
an email,
this,
to say like what the
but they
directive
may
was to
hear
the
it from, we
teachers.
didn't like discuss it in class or right. So like we'll
Yeah.
know that it wasn't a topic formally
Yeah.
at
Right.
school.
Right.
But
So the school I was at they have like a lower school, middle school, and a high school. So I know whatever happens in middle school and high school world is very different than what happens in lower
Right.
school. Nothing
Yeah.
came out in
Yeah.
our lower school goes to 4th grade. They didn't mention anything, but I have asked her because I think it was like last year, maybe 1st grade. She came home and was like, "Oh yeah, we did this like, what do you do if a robber comes?" So that's how they're kind of, telling kids
Yeah.
that, I think, without scaring them. And so she's in a new classroom this year. And obviously, because we are fresh off of, this happening twice now since the school year started, I said to her, I was like, "Oh, have you guys talked about, that yet?" It was like, because she just started school.
Yeah.
And she was like, "Oh yeah, we talked about it now because we're in a new classroom
Mhm.
of what we do." Yeah. And she's like, "Oh yeah, if the robber comes." And it's so like interesting to me that she knows what a robber is, right? But she hasn't asked me, why would a robber come to my school, right? And so I'm waiting
Right.
for those questions to come about, like, why would a robber come to my school? Or, because of the way that they're wording it. And I wonder if that will shift for 5th grade when they actually start using other language to describe that, or if they do, I don't know. Do you know what your guys' schools, I'm sure you know what they do. If they do practice these, what are they using as terms?
Ours is this week. We got a notification they're practicing this week.
But are they not calling it robbers? What are they
no, they're calling
saying?
it safety drills, I think is what they call
Safety
them.
drills.
bats.
Gotcha.
My kids
Yep.
takeaways, like if a bad guy comes to,
Yes. I mean, hers was like if a robber comes is what she
Right.
Ours is a specific like system, and they use the words in like the system, like the boot and the like whatever, like they use like the actual words. So they really try to normalize it.
Yeah.
I can't believe I'm using that word, but
Right.
there is a sense, I think, of safety and security that kids get from it
Right.
feeling
They know
normalized.
what to do.
So they do their fire drills, tornado drills, and their their safety drills.
Safety
Yeah.
drills.
Safety
Yeah.
drills. So they're calling it safety
Mhm.
drills. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
Well,
I think they use the language within the drill so that I don't even I do think kids have an incredible ability to be resilient and flexible. I mean, that's why they learn so well at these young ages, right? For
Yeah.
good and
Right.
bad. So I do think it just kind of sinks in for them and becomes part of their
Well, yeah, when you have an
yes.
adult who's speaking calmly about something,
Yeah.
kids are gonna,
Yeah,
you
the
know, they're gonna
educators do an
see,
incredible
yeah, and
job
I
of
mean, they're
that.
speaking of it in a very calm way, and
Yep.
even as a parent, if you're talking about
Yeah.
something in a calm way, that gives your child like reassurance. Like if you're,
That sense of security.
yes, if
Yep.
you're not using
Yeah.
body language that's kind of, you know, and even wording or tone of
Yeah.
voice that's you know, giving the message that this is okay and this is, you know, how we keep you safe, then I could see how a child would be like, something's wrong. But if you're
Yeah.
approaching it in a very kind of matter of fact way, this is what we do
Yep.
when this happens, and this is
It
how we
gives
keep
them a
yourself
sense of
safe.
control.
It does. And I think
Yeah.
that then eliminates that, oh my gosh, what if something happens?
Confusion. Yep.
Mhm.
About
Yeah, so I
what's
wouldn't be
happening. Yeah.
surprised if she doesn't have a lot of questions about it, Vanessa,
Yeah.
because it's
Yeah.
just sort of
Oh,
ingrained
I mean,
in that
totally. She's like,
reassuring
we do
way.
the same thing.
Yeah.
She's like, we do the same thing if there's a tornado. And I was like,
Yeah.
you know, so in
Right.
her, it's just like, this is
Yeah.
what we do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was going to say is we did not grow up with that.
No.
But
No.
all of our kids, this is how they are growing up. So
Since day
in many
one.
ways,
Yeah.
this is their no
They're
different
normal.
for them than a tornado drill. Like
Yeah.
a tornado drill doesn't mean a tornado's happening, but we just have to
Right.
prepare for if a
Safety.
tornado
Yep.
comes. So I think we approach it from like, oh my gosh, these poor kids, this is like, I can't believe, how do they wrap their heads around this? Well,
Yeah.
but
They don't know any
it's not,
different.
they do not know any different. This is
Yeah.
their
Yeah.
world. They've never
Right.
been to school where
Yeah.
this wasn't happening.
Yeah.
So it's a concept that I think is
No,
just
it's true. I mean, we remember a day when airport security wasn't what it was.
right.
Yes.
You
Yeah,
could
I
walk
know.
up to the
Kids-
gate.
You
Yes.
could walk up to the gate.
I know.
Bring whatever
Our
you
kids
wanted
will
with
never
you.
know that. They've never
Never.
seen
Yeah.
that.
Never
Right.
seen
So
Right.
yes, to your
Yeah.
point, there it's
Yeah.
just it's a changing world, and we do best if we are flexible and change with it and adapt in the ways that we need to keep our kids safe and secure. And I think that's the goal for everybody, right? Is just, you know, as much
Yeah.
as possible reassurance and giving them a sense of control in a world that feels out of control.
Yeah, and circling back to, I think we talked a little bit about in the very beginning of this conversation, what are we doing just for ourselves to self-care? You know, any other thoughts on what we should be doing to make sure that we're protecting our own, like, you know, peace of mind and, you know, especially during this time where it feels like everything is, you know, kind of, I guess, out of control is how I feel sometimes, that
Yeah, I
can't
stay
really
off social
you
media.
can't control. Yeah, I mean, that's a great
Yeah.
one. Staying away from
just-
it. Yeah.
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 I think for me, one of the things that I like to do is, you know, obviously like shut off all the social media and then, you know, do something that I really enjoy. Like I really enjoy reading, and I read fluff trash and I like it. And it's just like a nice way to escape. And I know that, you know, same thing for shows. Like I think, Wilhelmina, you were just
Mhm.
talking about that show last week.
Yeah.
You're like, it's just for fun. Like it's just, it's just for fun. I think, you know, it's okay to enjoy those moments and do those things,
You have
especially
to.
in times like this.
Mhm.
There's nothing wrong with looking for some joy and some like quiet time in your brain. You know, like whenever
Yeah.
I'm like reading these things or watching this show where it's just, you know, I don't have to think, like that's a good thing to be able to do that. And that's okay. And I think that that's something that people should be doing, especially now, is having those things that you can just kind of escape for a period of time. But I also feel like that's a slippery slope a little bit too, is, you know,
Mhm.
if we just keep saying, kind of
Right.
forgetting about it, not talking about it, then change doesn't happen. Right. And so I think that it's finding that balance of the two.
So I
Yeah.
don't know if any of you follow that Therapy Jeff guy. He's
Yeah.
like on
Yes.
So he
I
had
don't
a
follow him, but I've
great
seen some of his yeah.
yes, he had a great post the other day, and it was called he was talking about like hyper normalization, and he said it is the state, and he said the state that we all go in, even when like all of these things are happening within our world, it becomes our normal. And he said it takes about 3 days from when something like an event happens where we are all then in our heightened state. And then he
Mhm.
said about 3 days, hyper normalization sets in, and we find ourselves kind of falling back into that.
Yeah.
So he
Mhm.
said, if you are wanting to take action, if you're wanting to do something, he's like, take advantage of those 3 days. And he said, that's where you sort of, talk about it, that's where you are most likely to like take action or
volunteer or donate
yes,
or
volunteer,
whatever
exactly.
you
Yeah.
feel like you can do.
Anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Something action oriented.
And I also think one of the other things he mentions was like, don't judge how you're feeling. Like any feeling or reaction that you're having to any of the things going on, you can just notice how you're feeling about it or notice your reactions to it. Get curious. I mean, we always say like, get curious about it, but you don't have to judge yourself. You don't have to judge how you're feeling, how you're not feeling. But maybe just say like, oh, I wonder why I'm feeling this way, or I'm wondering why this is my reaction. And if there's a point where you're feeling burnt out, where you're feeling, one, what would be helpful? Would taking action be helpful? Would taking a break be helpful? Would talking to a friend be helpful? Kind of taking the nuance of like action versus self-care and not judging how you're feeling, and thinking there's a right and a wrong way to feel for any of the things going on, because I think we've said many times, we are not living in a world where we're normally supposed to be seeing all of these things happen in such rapid succession. It's just not how our brains and our hearts, it's like more than we are supposed to be taking in.
I think that can also apply to the people in our lives. It's like I have now as an adult tried to, if somebody's like honking at me or doing something, I really try to just be like, hey, maybe they're having a bad day. Like, I don't know what's going on in your life. And I try to just like let it roll and not feel. And I think that we can apply that to other people, especially in situations as maybe they're still processing, give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they're just not sure what to say, and obviously there's situations where it's very clear, where somebody stands. But I think giving people the benefit of a doubt in these situations, especially in like the current situation of our country, is really important, because we just don't know. We just don't know how this particular event is affecting them. Maybe maybe it's hitting closer to home for them for some reason, or they just don't know how to process feelings, or there's a million reasons why someone may be behaving the way they are, or saying the things that they're saying. You just don't know. And so I think that it's important to apply that also to the people around us.
Sure. And one other thing I would add in, as I know we're wrapping up, is something my husband started doing with my kids during COVID. And I was like, kudos to you for coming up with this. And it's super basic, is he would say to our kids, is there anything at all on your mind that you have, anything you're wondering about, anything you have questions about, anything you want to talk about? And he'd either do it at dinner or he would do it at bedtime. And he did it with, Danny was 5 at the time. He was in kindergarten. And it was like in the midst of COVID, and Dan just sort of came out with it. And Danny was like, yes, when is COVID going to end? I hate it. And he just like unleashed. And Dan and I were like, oh, okay, maybe we're on to something.
It's probably pretty helpful for him.
Yes. And so periodically I'll forget to do it, but I'll like be saying goodnight to them, or we'll be reading in bed together. Sometimes I'll lay with them and read next to them. And I'll just stop and be like, hey, anything at all, like about anything. Like
nothing's
you name
off
it.
The table.
Yeah, nothing's off the table that you have questions about, you're wondering about, anything.
I love that.
And usually it's something super silly and like weird, like the stuff that they come up with.
Did you buy me Pop-Tarts the next time you're at the store?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Do you know when the new Target's going to open, or, whatever? Like it's something super benign and silly, but you're always pushing that door of communication open and letting your kids know that
You're modeling.
Anything, nothing's off the table. Anything can be brought up.
I love that.
How often do you do that?
Oh, once a month, if that.
Oh,
if
I do it a lot
when I think of it. Yeah.
Okay.
My
I
kids
forget.
get
I'm
annoyed
also
with me.
like,
it's
time to go to bed. Like, good night.
Yeah.
We're not.
Yeah.
I feel like I wouldn't do that to Maddie at bedtime, because she would be like, let me talk to you for the next 3 hours about everything on my mind.
Pick your time.
I like to do that
carefully.
I like to do that when like we're in the car driving somewhere.
Yes,
like
on the
that's
way
like my time
somewhere.
where I'll be like, okay, we have like
Time
25
limited.
minutes right now, until we
Yeah.
get wherever. And, we're not
That's
trying
a
to get to
great
bed right
idea.
now. And so like, hey, anything, anything on your mind, anything you want to talk about. Or sometimes I'll just even say to her, like, I love you. And, you can always tell me anything. And she'll, okay, mom, but I just want to
Mhm.
remind her
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
like, you can tell me
Nothing's off the
anything,
table.
anytime. Exactly. And so even if I'm not asking her, like, right specifically, I just am letting her know,
Yeah.
So, yeah. Any last thoughts on today's topic? All right, ladies. Well, this was a good combo. Thank you for
Yeah.
joining us today. Please join us next time on The Shrink Down.